If you had a really highly functioning car and you were using it to try to cross a lake, um, and there were problems in doing that, that would really be of no surprise to any of you. Um, and if a guy who was trying that yelled up at you, "What's wrong with my car?" You might suggest that it's not so much that there's anything wrong with the car, it's that there's something inappropriate for how it's being utilized. And I would suggest that if you think of some guy walking down the street and there isn't anything you found out about him, he's just a guy walking down the street, that there are some things we can know right away. And one of those things is that he's somehow surviving with the wrong equipment. So sometimes you have experienced something we could call disturbing. And when that took place, you might have noticed that there were things that started happening in your body. Um, One would just be, um, you know, feeling this uncomfortable feeling. You might say, I was wired or stressed. I can feel it in my chest. I can feel it all through. You might notice heart beating um, faster and more prominently, and you notice that happening, and feelings in your stomach. Have you had ever, if you've had a near miss automobile accident or something startling, didn't it kind of feel like your stomach was trying to move in with your forehead? Like, whoa, what happened there? Uh, all kinds of things like that take place. And when things like that are taking place because we think we have to have an uncomfortable conversation, you might wonder what's going on in my body and how does it relate to having a conversation? It's not useful for an uncomfortable conversation, is it? And I think what's going on there is, a rabbit would not be stressed out about having an uncomfortable conversation, would she? If she's stressed out, it's probably because she's thinking something would like to eat her. And the same stuff will happen within that rabbit's body, but it won't be alarming to the rabbit. In fact, the rabbit will probably be preoccupied with the wolf rather than the sensations in her body. Those sensations are accompanying that rabbit being able to run much faster. So when they're not caused so that rabbit will experience sensations. They're caused so that rabbit will run faster, be able to run faster. The sensations are accompanying things that go on within the body to enable running faster. But running faster isn't going to be advantageous in this difficult conversation you're anticipating. And so body is preparing very well for a situation that isn't in existence. And so that feels like there must be something wrong with me. The way that feels, yeah, it's off, but there's more than that. There's also that the emotions that accompany anticipating this difficult conversation are likely to be emotions like fear or perhaps anger or some kind of thing that it's hard to interpret. Um, but it's kind of like both of those at once. Um, just like what's going on physically is really useful, but not for the situation that you're in. The emotion going on is also connected to those changes going on within the body. That's what it's for. But so the emotion is also then created to be very useful, but for a situation that you're not in. So, it's a really good Toyota, but it's having difficulty getting across the lake. Um, the body is not built for it. The emotions are not built for it. And they're built for completely different situations, like the kind of situation that would be experienced by a rabbit. Um, something looking to eat you, but no difficult conversations. Are rabbits worried about dying? Um, I don't think so. Are rabbits worried about illness? Worrying about illness is interesting because worry means fear. Fear causes body to get ready to run. Well, when all the energy goes there, what is it taken from? Where does the energy come that's going to enable Rabbit to run faster than she normally could? One significant place it's taken from is it's taken from the energy that would have been there for the rabbit's body to heal itself. The healing process is pretty remarkable, isn't it? I mean, there was a time that you, as a child, even noticed a cut, maybe a scrape, a bruise somewhere on your body, and then you looked at it, it was different, and you looked at it, it was gone. And now, as there's a cut and it heals, you're probably glad it heals if you think about it, but I bet you don't jump up and down and scream, look at this, a scab is forming. Um, well, it's worthy of jumping up and down and screaming. It's pretty freaking remarkable, but you've gotten used to it because it's happening within your body all the time. However, if you're annoyed, if you're annoyed, much less enraged, the energy comes from the healing and starts moving into enabling you to bite something harder, literally, physically. And that's not what is going to show up to do because you found the guy next to you popping his gum to be annoying. Um, you're eating in a restaurant and some of the energy is going to digestion. And maybe you're having quite a pleasant time. And then maybe somebody 4 tables down answers his cell phone, and what he's saying is louder in your ears than the person who's sitting across from you. And so you start to say, the hell, can't that jerk say, hold on, and walk outside? I can hardly hear you speaking a foot away from me because I'm hearing that guy louder yards away. So there's annoyance. What is that doing? Well, it's bringing, there's some energy there moving into anger. And where might some of the energy be coming from? Digestion. You see, when Rabbit sees approaching Wolf, digesting her lunch is certainly not a priority. A high priority is not being a lunch. So no energy will go into digesting lunch, or at least much less. And the energy will instead go into being able to run away better. So there the guy is in the restaurant, and he just, took a bite of ravioli. And as that goes into his digestive tract says, there's been an emergency alert here. We're not bothering with digestion. Um, so I'm suggesting to you that when you see that guy walking down the street, before you know anything at all about him, know that that's going on. And if that's going on, if that Toyota is crossing a lake and it's built for a highway, the curious thing is not, gosh, why is that guy in the Toyota going to arrive late? How come he didn't show up on time? That's not what you wonder about, is it? It's like, how the hell is that guy managing to survive? How has he figured out how to get the frickin' Toyota to float across a lake? Not, why is it taking him so long? So we've been programmed from earlier than we were able to even think in a way that has any access to logic or reason. We've been programmed to think that the Toyota is supposed to be able to cross the lake, not only to do it, but to do it well. And so you, I believe, have been thinking that about yourself and saying, I should be able to handle this crazy freaking world that no human is built, equipped to even address. I should be able to handle it, and I should be able to handle it pretty damn near perfectly. But if the guy's getting the Toyota across the lake, we're not screaming at him, you're not doing it perfectly. We're jumping up and down, clapping and saying, wow, how'd you figure out how to do that? So the next time somebody walks in for your lunch date 15 minutes late, and you look at them rather than uh, rather than couldn't you have called asshole? How about, oh my goodness, how did you get here? How could you have actually navigated enough to reach pretty close to the time-space coordinates that allowed us both to be in this restaurant at the same time? That's flipping amazing. Yeah, but I'm a little bit late, I know. But you got here. That's what I certainly never expected you to arrive. How can people arrive? How does anybody ever get where they're going? But what's what's featured, what we learn to pay attention to is what we think of as wrong. So how many of you are saying, well, there's no bruise on my hand? I don't have a cut on my knee today. How is this happening? Oh, you notice that hangnail. What the hell? I don't remember signing up for that flippin' thing on my finger. Um, so the reaction then to the lack of perfection causes more perhaps annoyance, anger, which causes things to go worse because it makes the equipment further malfunction emotionally and physiologically in the situation that it's in. And um, things spin that way. So if you happen to turn on the news this morning or wherever you are this afternoon, tonight, and you hear the headline, the massive dysfunction that seems to be permeating the civilization becomes a bit more understandable. And if it's a bit more understandable and you're viewing it as, whoa, this is weird as challenging terrain to navigate, well, right on with that. But that's different than this mountain should have been flat since I'm thinking to drive over it. That there, there shouldn't be snow because it's in the way of me driving smoothly. And who put that asshole in front of me? And why was the guy behind me poised like a race car driver to jam his horn within an 18th of a second of the light changing to green? If we can flip that a bit toward how the hell did we get the Toyota to actually float? Then it'll kind of bring things perhaps down a bit. Um, Maybe a little less buzz, a little less anger, a little less frustration, a little less fear, anxiety, depression, shame. That's a good one. Yeah. You know, rabbits have to deal with wolves. That sort of sucks if you're a rabbit. but they don't ever have to deal with shame. And you weren't born with it. It was methodically installed so that you wouldn't poop on the floor. Remember? Um, and damn, I'm thinking about our puppies, you know? What did you do? Shame on you. You pooped on the floor. The hell are you thinking, dude? I had to poop and the floor was underneath me. You know, it goes down, not up. I mean, what are you thinking here? Well, shame on you. And the dogs are so damn smart, they're able to look ashamed when actually they're probably just significantly afraid that the person who's bigger and they're depending on looks like he's getting unwired. Um, I don't think they're having conversations the next day. I really let my master down yesterday. I still can't get it out of my head. I mean, she deserves better than that. If I had to poop, I should have gotten off of her pillow first. Uh, anyway, blah, 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 whatever, who cares, right? But I do care that you are here. And that's really also getting this to happen, getting you here. It's sort of like getting that Toyota to float across the lake because you'll notice that we are culturally programmed to convince other people that we're doing well with all this crap. Hey, how you doing? Suicidal. That's not supposed to be the answer. Um, you know? And what are we hearing from everybody? Fine, 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 fine. Good, good. I'm good. I'm good. You're good. I'm good. Unless we happen to be putting our toe in the uh, craziness of social media where nobody is fine or good, but seem to be flipping as fantastic constantly. Um, um, you know, because that's what they do for a living, is convince you how well they're doing so you will pay them to be doing as well as they are. And it's working. Um, I know you want more money, and I have the solution. Send me yours. Things will be better then. Ah, that makes sense. I have $500. If I give you two, that should be really good for me on my way to 1,000. Um, so it's sort of amazing, but it works. And and if you get out of bed and say, you know, so this is I'm going to have an adventure in a worldwide Ponzi scheme today. Um, uh-oh, here's an email. Some, uh-oh, red alert. Uh, ah, there's a problem with my Amazon account, and they just need my social security number, or else I'll go to prison. Sounds good to me. And every time I hear somebody falling for one of those stupid scams, I think, what a jerk, you know, especially when the person that fell for it was me. What? You just needed to have me download this so I wouldn't have that, and it made perfect sense at the moment. Plus, it came from all these people I trust. So whatever, I'm just suggesting we celebrate each of you. When I call on you, will say something other than fine, but tell us what's actually going on. That, I think, will be piercing um, a significant piece of what's causing the turmoil. Because a significant piece of what's been causing the turmoil you've been experiencing has been the belief that you're not supposed to have been experiencing it. And it's really hard to do the dishes when they're not supposed to have been dirty. Um, then you just look at the dishes in the sink and go, this is wrong. It's just wrong. I can't deal with that. They shouldn't be there. And that's what's going on within us when we are expecting ourselves and others to function better. And what do you need in order to function better? Be a good girl. There you go. Good girl. That's it. Nice. Good job. Um, ever ever heard that once or twice? Um, I, I mean, you ever have somebody older than 3 say to you, the problem I'm having is that I'm just not good enough? What the hell did that come from? When's the last time a rabbit told you that? I'm not, I'm not good enough. What's the problem with this situation? Me not being good enough, you know, or unless you're in a relationship, but that at least solves some of that. Then when she says, I'll tell you the problem with this situation, he's not good enough. Um, so we're dealing with um, some challenging things, and I'm asking you to entertain the possibility that the fact that you're in as good a shape as you're in, meaning that you're alive, is pretty freaking remarkable, and quite curious. So, like, wonder why that happened. And we've learned, the behavioral psychologists have taught us that what we notice increases. And they use that with all this biofeedback and neurofeedback stuff, right? So if they want something to increase, they, cause a buzzer to go off or a light to shine, something where you'll notice it and then it will increase because it's noticed. And that's um, that reminds me of when I went to SeaWorld, and somehow I got one of these backstage passes, and I got to be back there with this beautiful gal whose job was to train this thing called Shamu. Um, I, I think I frightened her because as soon as I had a chance, I I went charging up to her And back then, I was just doing training for people in the mental health industry. And I ran up and stood in front of her. And she said, What? And I said, I just need to understand. And she said, what? I said, well, you see, I train psychologists and stuff. And she said, uh-huh. And I said, well, a while back, I saw you go into the pool where there was this whale, and then you went underwater where the thing was, and then the whale came up out of the water way into the air like it was a frickin' bird or something, and you were standing on his face. And she said, yeah. I said, well, I got to know how that's done because I'm training these social workers and they're trying to figure out what to do for depression. And I think if we could figure out how you stand on a whale's face, maybe that would give us a clue as how to move forward here. And she said, well, do you notice that I keep throwing fish into the pool toward Shamu? And I said, yeah, a lot of them. She said, you bet. But did you notice this little whistle that I've been blowing? Really high-pitched thing. And I said, yeah, actually, I was going to have a little heart-to-heart with you on that because it's a pretty good show, but the whistle thing we could leave out. That's annoying. You don't need to be like whistling here. We're good without that. And she said, no, I need to whistle. And I said, why would you need to whistle? And she says, because I can't throw the fish fast enough. And the fish I'm throwing in there to let Shamu know that in a way that Shamu understands what he just did has been noticed appreciatively, so it will increase. And the whistle, she says, you can't get the fish there fast enough. So we've been able to let Shamu know that when we blow the whistle, we're really liking it. And as soon as we can, we're going to be throwing a fish. So that's why I said that she's doing this weird thing. I mean, she stands at the side of this pool with this whale in it, jumping up and down like an incredibly excited, 16-year-old cheerleader whose team just won, blowing her little whistle, throwing fish, and, and then somehow into the water and standing on his face. And I said, so that's what you do when Shamu does what you want. And she said, that's it. She said, but I bet you're curious about something. I bet you're curious about what I do when Shamu doesn't do what I want or does what I don't want. And I said, yeah, we want to know that too. And she says, want me to show you? And I said, would you? And she said, I sure will. And I waited and she didn't do anything. And I waited and she didn't do anything. And then I said, well, you going to show me or not? She said, I just did. And I said, I think I missed it. Must have blinked. Would you show me again? And we went through this conversation 3, 4 times before I, got frustrated and annoyed. And I said to her, you're messing with me, girl. You're not doing a damn thing. And she stood right up to me, put her arms like that. She said, and what is it you expect me to do? I said, what do you mean? You're supposed to tell me what you do when the whale doesn't do what you want. She said, well, that whale weighs about 10,000 pounds. She said, I think I might be about 147. Were you thinking I was going to put him in timeout? I said, so how do you get him to do what you want so you can stand on his face in the middle of the air? And she blew the whistle. So that's pretty phenomenal to be able to stand on the face of a whale that's flying in the air and thinks it's a seagull. Now you know how to do it. You get one of these freaking annoying high-pitched whistles and a ton of fish. But so what I'm suggesting for lovely Julia is that this amazing child in her arms, she's going to have to get into this crazy relationship where her job is to cause that person to do things that there's absolutely no interest in doing, while stopping from doing what's really desired. And simultaneously being the very best friend. And that's all you got to do to be a mother. You got to get the kid to do things that he doesn't want to do, make sure he doesn't do what he does want to do. And of course, he's got to think that he just loves you for it. And if you don't hit those dots effectively, then I guess somebody hasn't been a good girl. That just might be you. And then you will be ashamed, which was inserted into your mind when you're about maybe a couple weeks older than Julia's child. That we don't want people pooping on the